The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. I am back, and you are comfortably zoned with me, the Zig Zag Man, in Alameda, California, right across the bay from San Francisco, in the northern part of California, the greatest state in the Union. Or am I wrong? Is it New York?
I would say New York. Definitely New York.
I guess you would. But David Hubler is going to join us. Al Blumkin and Hal Bock. Hal, you mentioned New York. Just out of curiosity, why did you say that?
We're having a big celebration. We're having a big celebration tonight with fireworks to celebrate the fact that we reached 70% vaccination, which was a mark that Governor Cuomo had set at the start of the pandemic. And we were at the bottom of the barrel when the pandemic started, at the worst state in the union, had the most infections. And today we have the least infections. So it's a great performance on the part of the state of New York. And we're celebrating tonight with fireworks. So New York's my hometown.
All right. It's my hometown, too. My adopted town, or town now, is Alameda, California. And Alameda is not celebrating. This is totally off the subject. But we're a small little town. And 2 or 3 weeks ago, in the most cruel way, which has become rampant, a man died in police custody after being intoxicated. Police were called. They tried to handle him in much the same way as the most publicized cases in the country. A man named Gomez died in police custody after literally being put to death by unnecessary force. And it's not the only time this kind of stuff has happened, but when it happens 5 or 6 blocks from where you live, in a little nook, a little park that looks over a lagoon in Alameda, and it is so peaceful. And this guy was an alcoholic, made a lot of trouble in town, and for acting out. And that said, the death penalty shouldn't come into play. There should be some sort of police reform where they call, in cases like this, they call psychologists or trained folks to come out and deal with it. And because this sort of stuff...
Too much of that going on, Ralph. Too much of that going on in the country.
Right. And when it hits so close to home, I just have to recognize it. And I jokingly say from Alameda, California, we are a great little hamlet, an island off of Oakland, a man-made island that has better weather than San Francisco by about 10 degrees every day. And it's just a lot of Victorian homes, a lot of biking. It's just a great place to live. And when something like that happens so close to home, where ESPN is in your backyard practically, it just brings a sadness to me. That's all. Not just for Alameda, for the country, for what we're going through. And if you want to be a reductionist, how many lives could be saved by effective gun control? We don't need killer weapons in our community. The availability of them is nuts. And
forget that. The Republicans will block anything to try to in the Senate and the House will try to block anything that resembles gun control.
Well, I'd like to say the Republicans are to blame for everything, but the NRA puts money in bipartisan in these guys.
They're bankrupt. The NRA is bankrupt. We're trying to declare bankruptcy.
Oh,
because
okay,
the head of it, this Wayne LaPierre, stole a lot of money from them.
Yes, but point is, they over the years they've made an impact on Congress people's thinking to the point where they're blinded by these atrocities. And
here in the city itself, here they have an awful lot of shootings. There was a big article in the Daily News yesterday. Cover story was about the subways with the homeless doing their bodily functions on the subway. And it's just, to me, the problem with the homeless is intractable.
Which means can't ever be solved.
That's right.
Not easily. Not easily.
Yeah. Hey, let's change the subject a little bit and talk about a topic that I thought of today while thinking of my favorite announcer of all time. And the topic itself is Jewish athletes. Now, my favorite announcer happened to be an Olympic hero and a Jew, Marty Glickman. I'll start with you, Alan, because Hal and I talked about him a little bit off the air. What is your first thought when I say Marty Glickman?
That's a snowbird. That's the phrase he used when he was doing nicknames.
Okay.
But when they had the Olympics in Berlin in 1936 under the Nazis, he was allowed to run. There's another Jewish guy with him that wasn't allowed to run because they were Jewish in Nazi Germany.
What was his name, Hal?
The other athlete? I have no idea. I know that what happened was that Avery Brundage, who was a noted racist and Nazi lover, stepped in and requested that Marty be pulled from the relay team that was going to win the gold medal, and insisted that he not run because he would offend Hitler as a Jewish athlete. And so Marty missed out on the opportunity to win a gold medal. We won the gold. Jesse Owens nobody could catch him, even though he was black. That probably offended Hitler as well. But Marty was deprived of a gold medal, and it bothered him all his life. I know that. I became friendly with him, and he was a terrific guy. And as great an athlete as he was at Syracuse University, and then later as an Olympian, he was a better broadcaster. I mean, he did the Knick games for many, many years, also did the Giant games here in New York, and he was fabulous. And later in life, he mentored many of the broadcasters that became celebrated after him. My friend Marv Albert, who just announced his retirement, Marv Albert was one of his prize students, and Marv learned a lot of what he knew about broadcasting from Marty Glickman. A lot of others who passed through Glickman's little studio at the NBC building, and he taught them the tools of the trade. He was a great guy, just a wonderful, wonderful guy. And unfortunately, ran afoul of a racist who was running the Olympics at the time, and it was unfortunate.
Yeah, Avery Brundage was a known racist, and that's sad. The reason I mentioned the other fellow, his life didn't turn, I can't think of his name, I knew it at one time.
Sam, was it Sam something, Sammy?
Yeah, but my point was he became embittered. Something that Marty never was. He was sad about his circumstances. He wished things were different, but I don't think you knew him. You wouldn't describe him as a bitter man in life.
Mm-hmm.
Even though he was deprived, NBC would bring in guys from their affiliates all over the country to have Marv talk to them and mentor them and train them. And he was an inspiration as a kid growing up. He'd do high school football. He was in the community. As a matter of fact, when my high school had reached the New York City PAL finals, or it wasn't PAL, whatever it was. PSAL.
Right.
Right. They were the city champs, and they went to the city championship, and Marv Albert announced their game as a soccer game, and we went. All we could look at was Marv Albert throughout the whole game. He's on the sidelines announcing, and the kids are going, "Wow, it must have been a good soccer game." But we got the privilege of watching Marv Albert. He's like one of those iconic people.
And Marv Albert, Ralph, I rate announcers by how much they annoy me.
David Hubler's answer to that is Bob Costas. And
so, yeah, they were worse than him.
Right.
Dick Vitale. I can't watch any games that Dick Vitale does. The only way I can watch is Mute. But Marv Albert, the only time he bothered me was when he had to plug. It's not his fault. He had to plug all these other programs coming on TNT.
Right.
Well, it's his job. He had a job.
I know, yeah.
But you mentioned, I wanted to mention one thing about Marty. One of the things that he did every year, he did the Thanksgiving Day game between New Rochelle High School and I think Mount Vernon High School. It was a traditional game up in Westchester, and he would do that on TV every Thanksgiving. So, he wasn't only dealing with Carl Braun and Sweetwater Clifton. He was dealing with kids, high school kids. So he's a terrific guy, terrific broadcaster.
That's why I first knew of him when I started following the Knicks in 1952.
Wow.
And, he was the announcer, because they didn't televise home games. Everything was on the road.
Mm-hmm.
The first Knick announcer for me, I'm a few years younger, not much, but was Jim Palmer.
And
Bud Palmer.
I'm sorry, Bud Palmer, right. Who was also a Knick at one time, a player.
Yes, he was. That's correct. That's correct. He was a player. Speaking of players who became announcers and weren't very good at it, perhaps the greatest pitcher of our generation was a Jew named Sandy Koufax. And after he retired, they tried to make him an announcer, and he was absolutely awful, and he was uncomfortable, and he couldn't do it. He could throw the ball 95, 98, 100 miles an hour, but he couldn't broadcast games. It was not up his alley. So he did it maybe for a year or two, and that was it. But Sandy was, to me, you mentioned Jewish athletes. He and Hank Greenberg were the two greatest Jewish athletes that I ever knew. I knew of. There were great ones before that, but Sandy just dominated in his time, and so did Greenberg.
Did you know Al Rosen?
Sure, Al Rosen. Sure, third base. Yeah. I know. We had a lot of them.
What kind of interviews did Sandy and Al Rosen give? Were they open with the press? Were they unusually congenial, or the opposite?
Colfax was a very private guy. He was very quiet, self-centered, didn't allow you into his life very much. Al Rosen, I got to know Al Rosen when he was the president of the Yankees, which is not really president because Steinbrenner was the president of everything. But Rosen had that title, and he worked in the Yankee Stadium, and he was a very congenial guy, very nice guy, outgoing. He was outgoing compared to Koufax, certainly. Greenberg was terrific. I met Greenberg once, and he was wonderful. I mean, he couldn't have been nicer. Sandy was just a different personality.
Okay. He wasn't... he was just more introverted. He wasn't mean, Sandy.
No, he was introverted. He was a quiet, private guy.
Right.
What's not known about Sandy Koufax, maybe, I know one fact about Sandy Koufax that you guys may not know. At one time in his life, he was the son-in-law of the great actor Richard Widmark. He had married Richard Widmark's daughter. I don't know how long that lasted, but that was a fact. He was the son-in-law of Richard Widmark. You can put that down in your book. Yeah, that's true.
You want to hear an interesting fact? That Willie Mays got his first home run off Warren Spahn. Sandy Koufax got the first of his 2 home runs off Warren Spahn.
That I didn't know. That's a new one on me. I didn't know that.
Whoa.
Yeah, well, Saber a bunch of years ago came out with a home run encyclopedia, and they listed, pitchers hitting and all the rest of it. They hit their first, every player who they hit their first home run off.
I gotta run something by you guys. For my money, I mean, now I saw some great athletes in my career. I saw Willie Mays, and nobody could play baseball better than Willie Mays. I mean, he was just an amazing player. But for my money, the greatest athlete, the greatest baseball player that I ever saw was Warren Spahn. Now, why would you say that, Bock? Well, I'll tell you why. Warren Spahn fought in the Battle of the Bulge in World War II, and then came back to America and pitched for the Braves and won 373 games, more games than any left-handed pitcher in history. That would include Whitey Ford, that would include Lefty Gomez, and on and on and on. The most left-handed victories in history belong to Warren Spahn, who fought in the Battle of the Bulge. You put those two together, and I think you've got an amazing individual. So,
well, one of the birthdays I missed when I was out of commission for 2 months was his. So I got back. I put on Facebook. I said, missed 3 birthdays. I missed 3 birthdays: Spahn, Mays, and Yogi. And Spahn, he won 363 games. Pitched
373.
No, 73 is Mackison and Alexander.
Warren Spahn won 373 games. Look it up.
Well, you look it up.
I know it. I know it for a fact. I don't have to look it up. I know it.
Just look it up.
What we look up, Alan, is oftentimes what Halbach wrote. So he's the maven. I want to talk about Warren Spahn's game, which they wrote a book about. It was almost like a day in the bleachers about Willie.
Let me give you a couple of other numbers. He had 382 complete games, which will take them 50 years to get to that, the way things are going now.
Right.
maybe even longer. He threw 2 no-hitters. They had 13 20-game winning seasons.
He's pretty good.
Somebody brought up to me, well, I heard on the radio or something that Max Scherzer recently pitched his 12th complete game. My response to that was Spahn usually had that by the All-Star game every year.
That's right. You were right about that. And this is a guy who was dodging bullets. People were shooting at him, you know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's amazing. That's an amazing accomplishment.
He didn't win his first game until he was 26 years old.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And won all those games. Absolutely amazing. But let me complete this. There was a book written about a game that, extra inning game, where Marichal and Spahn
I have it,
were hitless. They both threw in excess of 250 pitches.
Yeah, measure the home run at the bottom of the 16th to win it for the Giants.
And Charlie Fox, who was the Giants manager, went to Marichal around the 12th inning or so and said, "Do you want to come out of the game?" And Marichal said, "As long as that old so-and-so is out there, I'm staying out there," because Spahn was an older pitcher at that point. So
he's only 42. He's only 42. Yeah.
Right. Incredible. What about Greenberg? Do you remember most? How you talked to him? What were you impressed by?
Do I remember who?
How Greenberg. What do you remember most about him?
I only spoke to him once. I only had an interview with him once, and he was a very gregarious guy. He also went to the same high school that I did here in the Bronx, and he was just a very nice man. He also was a terrific hitter, great home run hitter, very nearly broke Babe Ruth's record, and there is some speculation that he had 58 home runs, and there is some speculation that anti-Semitism played a role in him not being able to break the record because pitchers wouldn't give him anything to hit because he was a Jew.
You went to James Monroe?
I read that. Say again?
You went to James Monroe High School?
Yes, I did. Proud son of James Monroe High School.
My mother was
nice.
She was 5 years younger than Greenberg, so
nice
he was
school.
Gone by the time. Yeah, and Greenberg missed almost the entire 1936 season with a broken wrist, and then of course he was one of the first drafted in 1941, and he was discharged 2 days before Pearl Harbor, and he re-enlisted. So he missed like 5.5, the equivalent of 5 seasons because of the broken wrist and because of the service in World War II.
Now, Al Rosen had a limited career. He only pitched or played 10 years in the big league.
I need to apologize. I need to apologize to Alan. I believe you're right. 363 is correct. For Spahn.
Apology accepted. Yeah,
Thank you.
I just, this is just the way I do things.
What's the way you do things?
Now, and who are we talking about now?
Well, we were talking about
Al
Greenberg.
Rosen, yeah. No, Al Rosen. What happened, that Rosen was all-world in 1953. Won the MVP unanimously. He fell one batting point short of the Triple Crown. And what happened in the 54 All-Star game, he was hit in the hand. And he could never, I read stuff on him, he could never grip the bat the way he did before this. So he retired at the age of 32 in 1956, after 1956.
I've got to mention one thing. When Al Rosen was the general manager of the Giants, he arranged, this was in 1989, he arranged an old-timers day between the 1954 Giants and the 1954 Indians, his team. And both he and Willie were in uniform that day, and that was one of my greatest days as a fan. I got to go out and watch that old timers day. Many players were gone by that time, but a number of them on both teams still were alive, and it was a great day. He was a terrific general manager with the Giants. He, as well as the Yankees. He didn't get along with Steinbrenner. Am I right, Hal?
Nobody did. You were sooner or later you were going to run afoul of Steinbrenner, and
but he stood up to him. And
yes, he did. Yes, he did. He was his own man, and he thought, I'm the president of the Yankees. I got to be able to make decisions. Well, nobody made decisions on the Yankees except Steinbrenner, so it was a difficult relationship.
Totally off the subject, but I've been reading a lot about Gene Michael. I think he might have been the most effective Yankee general manager of his time.
He was a very smart baseball man. He knew talent. He could recognize talent. And George knew that Michael was a valuable asset. Michael at various times was manager, general manager of the Yankees, and of course a player for the Yankees. And George let him have his head. He paid attention to Michael. And Michael assembled some terrific players on the Yankees, which led to the dynasty of the 90s when they won all those pennants and World Series. So yeah, Gene was a good man.
Another little item about Al Rosen. He was born on February 29th. One of a handful of players that had that as his birthday.
So he's really only 27 and should be making a comeback.
Yeah.
We all should be 27 and making a comeback, if the truth be known. I want to hit on a guy that should have been in your book. Can't think of his first name. Hal Band was the book. And it was a Jewish guy named Steve Braun. Was it Steve? With Milwaukee, who started off his career like a house on fire. And
Rich Braun, Ralph. I think it was. It wasn't Rich. Steve Braun. Steve Braun played earlier for the Minnesota Twins. Ryan Braun. Braun. And what he did that was unforgivable to me was that he threw the tester under the bus. And I don't know if you remember that story, Hal, if that came out after your book.
Very vaguely, Ralph. I know that he had some issues with the testing, the drug testing, when that became a part of baseball. The time when they decided to clean up the game. They're cleaning up the game again now. They're banning the pitchers from putting sticky stuff on the baseballs. So so we go through cycles here in baseball. They had the steroid era, they had the drug era. Now we have the sticky stuff era. So there's always something.
How and Al, were you impressed? And I'm putting that in quotes, by when they announced that they were going to clean up the pitching from the sticky stuff and what have you. They put a date on it, June 21st. We're going to stop. Put a ban on this. Why don't? If it's illegal, why not start right now?
That means load it up now, baby, because you're not going to be able to do it later.
Exactly.
It's so typical of the convoluted thinking that goes on in the commissioner's office. I mean, I could go on and on about that. I mean, it's amazing what's going on in baseball. It's ruining the game that I grew up with, that I loved, grew up and loved as a child, as a kid, and grew up and loved as an adult. But the game, I don't recognize it anymore. I really don't. Some of the things
You're
that
not
go
the
on
only one, Al.
I know.
I find it impossible to watch.
It's not. Yeah, I agree with you. I can't watch. I don't watch.
There's no fundament. Most of these teams have no fundamentals.
Exactly. That's the first rule. Fundies, what the players call fundies, and they're just not. Either they're not taught, or they're not practiced, or what. I challenge you to watch a Yankee game sometime, and see guys running from second to third on balls hit to the shortstop. I mean, that's just not done.
Oh, yeah,
you know?
One of them got thrown out the other day. Again,
Sanchez.
Yankees are leading into the majors, and runners getting thrown out on the bases and rounding into double plays.
They just don't pay attention, I guess. I don't know.
And did you see a video of the Pirate first baseman with the run down between home and first?
I love it.
I've never seen anything like that ever.
And then a couple of weeks later, another Pirate, the son of Charlie Hayes, the old Yankee third baseman, his son hit a home run, and he failed to touch first base. That's a Marv Throneberry trick. That's the old Marv Throneberry. I mean,
the Pirates are on their way to losing their 9th straight game. I was watching the Dodger Pirate game last Thursday afternoon on YouTube, and the Pirates' season was a microcosm of the bottom of the second and top of the third. They have a runner on third base and nobody out in the bottom of the second. There's a fly ball hit to medium right where Mookie Betts made a shoestring catch. The runner on third left a little bit late and he got thrown out. So instead of having him run on third and one out, they had 2 outs and nobody on base. Then at the top of the third, the pitcher who they shipped down to AAA after the game, in the top of the third, he hit 2 batters on 0-2 counts. I mean, I'm watching this stuff in total disbelief. And tonight they decided to make it easy for their 9th straight loss. They gave up 5 runs in the first inning to Washington.
That's not a very good team.
No,
your team is not a very good team.
I know. You know, I put down every time they go through stretch select, I put down on Facebook because I expect them to lose every game, and I put down 1952 when it was 42 and 112.
That's right. That's all right. We had the Mets. The Mets lost 120 games in 1960.
But that was their first year.
All right, but we we did it. You know, Casey Stengel said, "Can anybody here play this game?" Yeah. And the answer was no, they couldn't.
Yeah. Jimmy Breslin wrote a book with that title.
That's right.
But the 2003 Tigers went 43 and 119.
They came close. I know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. How would we talked a little off the air? You're just not watching the Mets anymore.
I can't take it. I can't take it. I cannot take it. They bring in this bullpen of Familia and Diaz. I can't take it. I just can't watch it because I'm not a young man, and I don't want to have aggravation. So what I do is I pop in just to see the score. In fact, last night we watched something on TV, my wife and I, and it was time to go to bed, and I said, just let me see the Mets score. And it was 5-2 Mets after 8 innings, so it was 3 outs to go in the 9th inning. I said, I'm not watching because I anticipate something bad happening to them. So rather than have to sit through it, I'll read about it in the paper tomorrow morning, you know. Well, of course, they won the game, and
I go on to the ESPN app. That's what I do for scores. I go into the ESPN app.
I just can't handle it. I just can't handle it.
It's impossible to watch.
They've done it to me too many times, and the modern game, what they like to call the modern game, is just not my cup of tea. I don't like the way it's played. I don't like the rules. I don't like a lot of it. Now I watch occasionally because, like tomorrow night, I will watch the Met game because DeGrom is pitching, and he's otherworldly. I mean, he's just unbelievable. So I'll watch that game with DeGrom pitches, but ordinarily I don't watch.
Okay. Well, I want to tell you something. You badmouth Familia with good reason, but Diaz has made an incredible comeback. He's only blown one save, and he's doing very well. So
you know what? You know what, Ralph? I always expect the other shoe to fall. I've been through it with him. I went through it with him 2 years ago, and that's how I feel about the guy. I mean, I know he's pitched well lately this year, but I just have my qualms about him, you know?
Okay.
I'm a member Ralph, I'm a member of SABR. And I'm on the historical side, not the statistical analytics and all that. SABR runs the first week of March. They run a analytics conference in Phoenix. And they had to do it virtual this year. So in one of their newsletters I got, they listed the topics for this. I wouldn't last a minute in any of them.
Okay. What were some of the topics?
My three favorite things: launch angle, exit velocity, and spin rotation. Because I was listening in the hospital to the Corey Kluber no-hitter, and the guy who does the post-game is Sweeney Murdy. He's been doing it for quite a while. Said, well, of the 27 outs, 3 had high exit velocities. Like, who cares?
They were outs. They were out. I know. Well, the problem is analytics has taken over baseball.
It's ruined the game.
And sabermetrics. I know you're a member of SABR, but sabermetrics have. Well, you know, they've taken over the game, and I can't deal with it. I can't. You know, somebody said to me, "What's so and so's WAR?" I said, "What's his WAR? What are you talking about?" Wins above replacement. Let me ask you this. The Yankees had a first baseman named Wally Pipp back in the 20s, right?
Yeah.
And he came to the ball game one day and he had a headache. And the manager, Miller Huggins, said, "You know what? Take the day off. I'm putting Gehrig in." Lou Gehrig played first base for the next 2,130 games. Now, what I want to know is, what was Wally Pipp's WAR? Wins above replacement. His replacement was Lou Gehrig.
No, I have a thing about WAR. If you're a very good player on a bad team, your WAR is higher. Like Mike Trout on the Angels, who I think is overrated because he's only played one. He doesn't play any games under pressure because they stink. And he got hurt. He's out for 2 months with something or other. And anybody that they put in center field has to be a lot worse than him. So
right.
if you got WAR, if you're a very good player on a bad team, your WAR is going to be higher.
Well, what if you're a bad player replaced by a Hall of Famer?
Yeah,
Wally Pipp was an ordinary player, and the Hall of Famer replaced him. Wally Pipp's WAR must be minus something or other.
Yeah. Somebody put down in one of the groups I'm in.
What was Babe Dahlgren's WAR when he replaced Lou Gehrig?
It's a good question.
All right. Just
what is WAR good for? And I put down absolutely nothing.
Remember that old expression. Is there any statistic, I'll ask both of you, new age statistic that you get anything from Alan Blumkin?
Okay, the only 3 I get from is on base plus slugging, what they call OPS. There's nobody paying attention to. You know who's one of the top 10 OPS guys was Ferris Fain, because he walks so much. But and the other one that
statistics I like. You know what statistics I like? Hits, runs, and errors. Hits, runs, and errors. Batting average, home runs, RBIs, ERA. Those are the numbers I pay attention to.
And the
wins and losses are pretty important too.
Which one?
The pitching one is WHIP, WHIP, which is walks and hits per inning. And the lower it is, the better it is, obviously. But the rest of them, they could stick up their backsides.
Okay. You know, the statistic you mentioned initially, Alan, which was slugging percentage plus on-base percentage, you could judge a pitcher as well by that statistic, what he gives up. So that is I agree with you 100%. That's a great statistic. But most of them, exit velocity, a guy hits it hard off the bat. One can see that. You can see a ball coming off the bat. You knew that Dick Allen, for instance, hit the ball hard. Mantle hit the ball hard. Do we need a statistic to show the exact amount? And where is that going to fit into your mindset of a kid following the game? A little kid, give me the basics. How many home runs? How many walks?
We talked before about the great Al Rosen. Al Rosen played third base for the 1954 Cleveland Indians. The Indians came into the Polo Grounds to play the Giants in the World Series, the opening game of the World Series. And in the 10th inning, the Giants had a pinch hitter named Dusty Rhodes. And Dusty Rhodes came to the plate, and Bob Lemon was on the mound. Lemon was a Hall of Famer. And Rhodes hit a pop fly to right field. It was a pop fly. Bobby Avila, who was the second baseman, started to go back on it. And Rhodes' pop fly went 200 and some feet and clipped the overhang in right field. Home run. The exit velocity must have been about 29 miles an hour, but it was a home run because of the logistics of the ballpark. And it's something that Bob Lemon lived with for the rest of his life. He couldn't believe it. But that, to me, was the magic of baseball. And it didn't matter how hard you hit it; it's where you hit it. And now they have to measure the miles per hour of the ball gets hit. I don't know why that's necessary.
Well, I tell you, Sports Illustrated used to run when it was a weekly, which was a million years ago already. Signs of the apocalypse, and said the sign of the apocalypse is when they start asking trivia questions on launch angle and exit velocity. Then you know everything is going. Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah. Well, things have reached the point where I'm saddened by your response tonight, Hal, about being so turned off with the game. I'm not saddened by your logic. I'm saddened by your not getting the enjoyment out of it that you're used to.
Because of what they've done to the game.
Right.
Because of what they've done to the game. They're putting a man on second base. He has no business being there in the 10th inning. How did he get there? Did he get a single and steal second? No. They just put him there. Well, I don't buy that. That's not for me.
I hate the 7th-inning doubleheader games.
That's another one.
I used to think Bowie Kill was the worst long-time commissioner ever, but Manfred, God, they have these Ivy League graduates sitting with computers who probably never saw a game of baseball in their lives, screwing it all up.
Yep.
Another thing that hurts is the shift.
Very good. Good point. DeGrom's last start, in his last start, he gave up one hit. The only hit was a right-handed hitter whose name escapes me at the moment, who punched the ball to the right side of the infield where the second baseman ordinarily would be standing in a normal configuration. But the second baseman was over on the second base side, the shortstop side of second base. So there was nobody there. He punched the ball into right field, base hit. It was the only hit DeGrom gave up. Well, why aren't you at second? Why isn't the second baseman playing second base? Because of the shift. Oh, they've thought they figured out the shift. Terrible.
Yeah.
It's just terrible what they've done to the game.
When I was a lot younger, the only player they used shifts against was Ted Williams.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Lou Boudreau invented that.
And he refused to give in to the shift. And it leads me to talk about Dave Magadan, who was former Met, real hitting machine. And he's a coach somewhere. And his philosophy is, and I don't know if his team would let him integrate it into his teachings, but if they give you third base, the third base line, and there's no one there, take it. It's a single.
It could be a double.
Right, but you take it, and not only is it a double, but it moves the next guy. It'll move the shift a little bit over the next time the guy comes up. So slowly but surely, it'll go back to the way it was if you do a wee Willie Keeler, hit them where they ain't.
Exactly.
And nothing can be more fundamental to the game. You mentioned fundies. What could be more fundamental than trying to hit it where the fielder isn't?
Of course.
I mean, that's
common sense.
It isn't a strategy. It's obvious. You just look around and you just shorten up or whatever it is, whatever it takes, choke up, hit it to the other side. You take the on base and keep the wheel moving. You don't hear the expression, get them on, get them over, get them in. Because there's nothing like that. There's no hit and run, very few sacrifices. As you know, I hate to use the word fundamentals. If you get, and a manager will say, "Well, I can't bunt. The player isn't taught to bunt in the minors."
Well, he should have been. He should have been.
Right, he should have been.
Part of the game.
Well, what motivates a minor leaguer or a player is the big bucks, and they pay the home run hitters the big bucks.
That's right.
But anyway, listen, we've had a terrific show. I'm going to end it because it's getting depressing. But informative. We'll be back next week, folks, or next month. Two of the smartest mavens in baseball. 1 second. Got somebody knocking at the door. Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, Al Blumkin and Hal Bock. Thank you for being here, Dove and Heshy. How about that?
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Happy trails and be well. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
The proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned Network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.